Good evening, church family. How about that? Well, as Brother John said, my name is Larry Heitch, and I am one of your state missionaries, and I get to serve in the area of men's discipleship. But my background is in student ministry and discipleship, education ministry, and I've served 4 churches in the state of Alabama, and I like to tell people this just so you know where I'm coming from. My heartbeat is truly for discipling next generations. So this is how I got into this. It's kind of strange getting to be in both worlds, both the student ministry world, but also with adult discipleship. Can I just tell y'all one thing I've learned in the last couple of years? We understand teenagers are crazy. Can we agree on that? But it's because they don't know any better. Senior adults are also crazy. And they do know better. That's the fun thing. So this, by the way, is for free. Okay, this happened last year, just to show you the spectrum of events that I get to be a part of at a student ministry camp for a church out of Mississippi. First time I meet these kids, had kids coming up going, "Hey, so what's your nickname? Can we give you a nickname?" I'm like, "I'm not telling you a nickname. I'm not going to do that." And there was this one junior guy, 11th grader, and y'all know every group has one. He probably hasn't had an original thought his whole life, and one thought just danced across his brain, and he went, I got one. He said, "We're going to call you Licky Larry." I said, no, do not call me Licky Larry at camp. Or after. I said, or after. I said, I know how it's going to go. You go home. How was summer camp? Well, it was great. Boy, Licky Larry, he did a great job. I was like, no, do not call me that. I have a mortgage. And so then a few weeks later, I go and speak to a group of senior adults. And it was the church I had been at before as an interim. So I was getting to share with the senior adults, but we had lunch first. So we had our mashed potatoes and meatloaf and all that. Well, I get my mashed potatoes and meatloaf. I sit down, and here comes Miss Debbie. Miss Debbie, she comes up and says, "Larry, I want you to know, my doctor told me I was supposed to have a colonoscopy today." And I said, "No, I'm going to go here, Larry." I said, "Well, Miss Debbie, that's a first in ministry. I've never had anybody choose me over a colonoscopy. Thank you." I told a friend of mine that, and they said, "Well, did you eat the meatloaf after that?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm Baptist." Of course I did. So I tell you those 2 stories just because I needed to tell somebody that. It has nothing to do with what we're doing tonight. No, it actually does. We're going to look at the younger generations and actually how the older generations have a lot of influence with these younger ones. So what we're going to do, my digging into this research was to help me with, I've been praying about, Lord, help me be sharp. Help me to be useful for the kingdom, and what should I do to prepare? So he led me to go back to New Orleans Seminary to work on an education doctorate. And so my topic that I chose dealt with intergenerational discipleship. What happens when you take someone who is between the ages of roughly 18 to 28 and you let them be mentored or discipled by someone of an older generation? What does that do to them spiritually and emotionally? The reason that's so important is because of what we're about to dig into in this first part. Because Gen Z, and we'll define that in just a moment, but we see that they are truly suffering with some terrible mental issues and emotional issues. And so I had to dig into what has happened to this generation. And when I say this generation, for this discussion tonight, it's Gen Z, which right now is ages 14 to 29. What's going on with them? How did they become known as the most anxious generation? So we're going to dig into that in this first section. We're going to look at why are they so anxious. So we'll look at some reasons and some thoughts, and we'll finish out with some practical ideas. And I hope that it's an eye-opening experience for you. It sure was for me. Because, look, as Christians, if you're following Christ, we've all been called to make disciples of all generations. But when you look, my heartbeat is for the generations that are behind me. And when I look at them, I still see something's different. Like I started with students when I was a student back in the 1900s. I was called into ministry when I was in college, but I started serving. I started teaching my Sunday school class because I grew up in a small country church, like maybe some of y'all might be in. Little country church. If we had 50 people, that was a good Sunday. And so we needed a Sunday school teacher. I was 17, and so the preacher just said, hey, you want to teach the class? And I'm like, sure. Man, I loved it. But I noticed that was my generation. That was Gen X. I've noticed, and y'all have too, over the last 30 years, there's been a lot of changes happen. This generation right now, completely different than what Gen X would have been, or the millennials even would have been right ahead of them. So, you're going to be challenged with this, and it's going to be a lot. So for the next hour, hang in there with me. Get your phones ready. There's going to be some QR codes up on the screen, but all those QR codes are also on your handout that you got as you came in the door. So the QR codes, I like to tell people, that is to show you, because some of this you're going to be like, oh, that, I need to show that to my grandchild or my daughter, my son. I just want you to know that I'm not making this stuff up. Someone else made it up, and I put their QR code on a sheet of paper for y'all to quote from. Okay? Now, this is really informal. We're all family here, so we'll treat this like it's our living room tonight, and we're going to be challenged with some things. And so if you need to stop me, ask some questions, feel free to do so, but I will stop along the way and check on you just to make sure you're not glossing over too bad. So let's do some definitions. Let's find out who's in the room and what generations are what. All right, so we see at the top our little kiddos. Those brand new, they still have that new car smell. Gen Beta started last year, January of 2025. If you have a newborn, they are considered right now Gen Beta. All right, so they started over with the alphabet into the Greek alphabet. Before them was Gen Alpha. They were born 2013 to 2024. Now, I don't see any Gen Alpha in the room, so I'll ask, how many of you have a Gen Alpha? Several hands. All right, sweet. Everything we talk about tonight is very much related to Gen Alpha as well, okay? And we'll talk about that in a second. Gen Z, that's who we're really focusing on, a lot of attention tonight, 1997 to 2012. Do we have any Gen Z in the room? Gen Z? How many of you are Gen Z? Raise the hand. If you are Gen Z, all right, I see a couple hands. I see it. Be proud of it, y'all. It's okay. It's safe space. Safe space. Now, if you have a Gen Z child or grandchild, raise your hand. A lot of hands. Okay. Now it's turning into group therapy. I see. All right, so millennials, 1980 to 1996, where are y'all at? Raise your hands. If you are a millennial, raise your hand. There you go. All right. My terrible joke for y'all is we have participation trophies for you in the lobby. Okay, thank you for being here. It's terrible. I apologize. But I'll get back at myself with this one. Gen X, we have Advil for you. It's out in the... All right, 1965 to 1979, where y'all at? That's me too? Yep. Excellent. All right, hands down. My boomers, 1946 to 1964, where y'all at? Nice. All right. Y'all are the calmest boomers I think I have ever seen. Y'all, I kid you not. You're tired. What time is it? No, you ain't. You can't be that tired. The other night, I was at a church in Pale City doing this, and I kid you not, there was a lady. They were excited. The boomers were hollering. There was a lady in the back there. She stood up. I was just asking. Boomers, y'all represent? And they were like, woo! Lady in the back stood up, both hands. I'm like, lady, please, sit down. You're not at a protest. Okay? It's getting scary. All right, silent generation, 1928 to 1945. I'll try not to make eye contact so as to make you think that I think you're that old. Do we have any silent generation in the room? You just proved my point. You are the silent generation. Well done. All right. I was at a church one time doing this, and I moved on a little too quickly because I just left it at the silent generation. There was some people in the back who got my attention very quickly, said, we have a guy back here, he's 99 years old. What generation is that? And I said, Moses, I don't know what generation that is. I had to look it up. It's the greatest generation. That's our World War II generation. So in your church right now, if you have a newborn and you have all the way up to someone who is 99 or older, you could potentially have 8 living generations in your church. What an incredible time to be alive. So we have a lot of opportunity here. So for the sake of this conversation, like I said, we'll spend most of our time dealing with Gen Z and how it relates to everyone else. But in this conversation, we're going to talk about anxiety. And with anxiety, we're talking about something that's more than just stress. All right, we all have stress. We all get that. We all understand that. But what we're talking about when it comes to anxiety is this, and here's how we'll define it. It's experienced as dread and worry. And this is not just a temporary thing. This is something that you kind of focus on. If you dwell on it long enough, it could lead to exhaustion. It has, at the core of it, it's a fear of what might happen in the future. And as the fear is allowed to linger, it diminishes a person's capacity to think clearly and to have healthy mental functions. So this is what we're dealing with when it comes to Gen Z. When we talk about stress and anxiety, this is deeper than just being like wigging out over a final, okay? This is something much deeper than that. And as you can tell, the studies that came out early, this is from 2010 to 2019, college freshmen, as the millennials were graduating off the college campus and Gen Z was coming onto the college campus, they started noticing around the nation, around our country, that the campus ministries, the campus counselors were being inundated. The cases of anxiety rose drastically as the millennials left and Gen Z was the ones taking over. It rose 134% cases of anxiety among college freshmen. And the reason this is important is because it goes up to 2019. Normally, I would want to have more up-to-date research, but this is important for us to understand because what happened in 2020? COVID. Y'all, we need to understand, COVID did not cause this. This was something that was started before COVID. Now, COVID did make it worse. We understand that something was taking place, and y'all can see that black line on 2012. That is what a lot of researchers would call the rewiring of the brain. That there was something going on around that time period that was introduced to our young people. And we'll talk about that more in just a moment. John, this morning, I forgot to come back to this. Would you please help me remember? Ask about the line from 2012, please. All right. So this is important because also with anxiety, anytime the National Institute of Mental Health talks about anxiety, it's coupled with depression. Normally, when one rises, so does the other. And y'all, why are we talking about this? Why is this so important for Southern Baptists on a Tuesday night to discuss this? You know, Satan is extremely effective at what he does. And right now, he is causing all generations all kinds of problems and chaos, because that's his job, basically. But with our younger generations, he has some devices and things in their lives that are so tempting and so addicting that it is creating major problems for them. And we're trying to make disciples of the younger generations. And so I'll give you this one case just to show you how effective Satan is right now at using this. About 3 years ago, I was talking with Sarah Farley from the IMB. Her job is to recruit young adults for the foreign mission field, for the IMB, to go on the foreign mission field. She said used to, for years, the number one and number two issues that kept people from going on the field or brought them home from the field, number one was pornography. Number two was debt. She said about 3 years ago, now the number one issue keeping people from going on the field or bringing them off the foreign mission field is anxiety. So this is something I understand. Number one loudest alarm we as Southern Baptists need to be sounding is always the gospel of Jesus Christ. Because we understand every person needs Jesus. Everybody needs to know the gospel. In my opinion, the second loudest alarm we need to be sounding right now is this. Because we have got to help our young people and our young parents to understand we're 20 years into having smartphones and 20 years into all the stuff we're about to discuss. It's still new. And so if we can help to change things right now, we can maybe help the next generation because, unfortunately, if we don't make major changes, Take a look at this. Here's your first QR code. Experts say, this came out 2 years ago, that Gen Alpha is on track to be worse than Gen Z. And so we have got to make some major changes now. Y'all okay with that? All right. So here's my next question for us then. How did we get to this point? What happened? What is building up? What happened with Gen Z to the point where they are now known as the most anxious generation, even the loneliest generation? So there's lots of reasons, lots of contributing factors. We're going to look at three. In the reading and the research, I have found three factors to be probably the most potent factors of all of them. And so the three that we're going to focus on for a few minutes here, one is postmodernism, two is modern parenting or safetyism, and then three would be devices and social media. All right, so we're going to go through these, and I will check on you after each one because it's a lot. It's not every week you're sitting in a Southern Baptist church talking about postmodernism. So we're going to take our time with it, okay? Just want to make sure that we do this together. All right, so let's jump into postmodernism. I'm going to give you a quick history lesson, a quick timeline. Y'all remember flannel graph, the flannel boards? All right, so here's my electronic flannel graph for us tonight. So here's where postmodernism was born. You go way back to the late 1700s and the early 1800s, and you had the Industrial Revolution. This was a major change to the fabric of families because if you have a farming family, which was what most people were up to this point, you had several generations living in the same house. They were working the farm. They were tending to the crops and the animals and to each other, to the house, to the property. Everybody working together, grandparents, parents, kids. But then with the Industrial Revolution, we start sending kids and dads off to factories. And so the fabric of the family starts getting torn apart. And so if the fabric of the family gets torn apart, people were feeling like they were just being shipped off to the factory. It felt dehumanizing. Matter of fact, there were so many people going off, especially over in Europe. Late 1700s, there were like gangs of children who were working in the factories. And when the kids would get off of work, they would be like gangs roaming the streets. And there was a guy who had a burden to reach these kids. His name was Robert Raikes. And Robert Raikes said, you know what I want to do? I want to teach these kids how to have manners. I want to teach them how to read, how to write, and I'm going to use the Bible to do it. And he created a little thing called Sunday school. So in the late 1700s, early 1800s, even in the United States, we're sending mostly dads and children off to the factory just to be a cog in a wheel. So we started feeling a little dehumanized. So fast forward. Then you get into the mid-1800s, 1850s, and you had Charles Darwin comes out with, what was his book called? The Origin of Species, that's right. So in his book, he said, basically, we're calling now into question, is Genesis accurate? The Genesis account in the Bible, can we trust that? Because what he believed basically boiled down evolution. We come from blue-green algae. Okay? So now we're feeling dehumanized. Now we're questioning, can we really trust Scripture? We've always trusted it, but now we're calling into question, if Genesis isn't correct, what else isn't correct in Scripture? So fast forward into the 1880s, and you have a guy by the name of Friedrich Nietzsche, German philosopher. And he wrote a book called The Gay Science. And in The Gay Science, he boldly proclaimed that God is dead. We killed him. We, the Superman, killed God. He said, he claimed, what if God is our most persistent lie that we've ever told? Now, that sent some shockwaves around Europe that eventually made its way over here. Because think about it, now we're feeling dehumanized. We're not trusting Scripture, not trusting the ancient wisdom, and now we're even questioning, is God even real? Where do we turn for hope and trust and all these things? So fast forward again. Now you're getting into the early 1900s. You have the Spanish flu, you have World War I, you have World War II, and now we're sending our kids off to war. We're not sending them to a factory, we're sending them off to war. There is death upon death. And so in the United States, now we're coming across the pond from Europe into the U.S. Now we're asking the question, Is this what we've achieved as mankind? That we're sending our people off to be dehumanized, to work in factories? Now we don't know what we can trust as far as truth. Do we trust Scripture? Because we're not even sure if God is alive and real. And now we're like seeing death upon death. And so you get into the 1960s in the United States, in our Christian nation. April 11th, 1966, Time Magazine, the cover of Time Magazine asked one question: is God dead? Y'all, postmodernism became mainstream in our culture in the mid-1960s. So that means that Gen X, all of us who are Gen X, we're the first generation to grow up hearing there is no absolute truth. If the wisdom of humanity past has led us to this point where now, as the United States, we're about to enter another war, where else can we look for truth? And so, in the 60s, and still today in our country, where are we told to look for truth? By culture. Deep within ourselves. Y'all, what does Paul have to say about that? What does Scripture have to say about that? Well, culture would tell us that now you look deep within inside yourself, you look into the mirror to find out what is true and what is real. So keep going, fast forward into the 1990s, and you get the World Wide Web. Now you've got the internet. And now you have not just being concerned with what's going on in your family or even on the news, on whatever's on broadcast TV. Now you can check out whatever anybody around the world is doing, and you become a global village. So kids, very early on, could be exposed to all kinds of things, other religious beliefs, things that were awful, terrible, but now we have it. And back then you would have had dial-up. Y'all remember dial-up? I mean, you can still hear the screeching and the screaming in your ears, you know. But then in 2007, we had an invention that would change probably another major turn and change a lot of fabric in our culture and society, and that was the smartphone. But in the 90s, let me go back for a second. In the 90s, we also saw not just the internet, but late 90s, you had something called social media to pop up. How many of y'all had MySpace back in the day? All right, several. Y'all, we were all Tom's friends, whoever Tom was, but everybody got a request from Tom. Then Facebook came out. And so now you've got people connecting all over the world. Then in the 2000s, 2007, when the smartphone came out, you have now for the first time, we're able to carry the internet in our pocket, and we are now connected to anybody we want to be connected to. And by the way, social media, who is it meant to elevate? Others or yourself? Self, 100% self. So with all of that as a background, let's talk about truth, because this is what our kiddos are being exposed to. This is what many of us have been exposed to. What is truth? Here's what postmodernism says. Truth is found inside yourself. Whatever you can cook up, whatever passions, desires, thoughts, feelings you have, that is your truth, okay? And so this is why you end up having a lot of confusion. This is why you would have someone, if they grew up apart from the church, apart from Scripture, apart from God's wisdom, if they grew up listening only to postmodern culture, which is what we have, if they grew up listening to this and they're told your feelings are truth, then you may have someone who says, you know what? I feel like I'm a cat. Because you can't tell me otherwise, right? If I define truth, I'm the only one who can make this up for myself. If I feel like the other gender, then you can't tell me otherwise. All right? So let me give you an example of someone who is basically I would say even a victim of just falling for this lie. Did you catch all that? Y'all, when I listened to that first time, I was like, I'm so glad I'm a dog parent, not a cat parent. So here's what happens. Here's what happens. If you're told that whatever you think and feel, you better wear that like a badge. That's exactly what this individual has done. Every thought, every feeling, every struggle they've ever had, they did what is told to us in postmodernism. They're living out their truth. You ever heard someone say that? Hey, I am just living, don't judge me. I'm living my truth. No, that is such a lie. There is no such thing as living your truth. That's like saying, hey, I don't believe in your gravity. Okay? You can fall for gravity every time. I'm not falling for that. That's stupid. Okay? By the way, I'm Gen X, and I still use words like stupid. Okay? So please, be offended. Because I'm not going to apologize for it. I'm going to go back to Wetumpka, John. You know, I'll just leave the mess behind myself. So living your truth, that's a lie. You can live your opinion. You can live your thoughts. You can live your feelings, but it doesn't make it true. You know, and the crazy thing about the Lord gives us freedom to be wrong. There is a such thing as truth. There is such thing as absolute, objective truth. And we know who that is, and that's Jesus Christ. And so, if you get into this a little further, you'll see that institutions cannot be trusted. And so with institutions within themselves, that means the government, that means church, that means the institution of marriage. All of these things, postmodernism would tell our young people, you can't trust any of them. Do you know what happens when we go through stressful times? Say in the church. If we go through a loss in your family, hopefully your church is right there with you to help shoulder some of that burden. All right, so that institution of the church will help shield you from some of that stress and anxiety, right? But postmodernism says you can't trust the church, you can't trust anything, you can't trust anybody but yourself. All that stress falls squarely on your shoulders. Can you see why this is so damning to our kids? They're told, you imagine you're 13 years old and you're trying to figure out, why is my body changing? Do I like that person? Do they like me? Who am I? Who's my group? What should I do? And they look at adults outside of the church, in culture, and they hear from them, hey, good luck. We're trying to figure out what life is all about. You're going to have to define what truth is for you. We don't even know why we're here. You cook up your own purpose for being on this planet. Good luck. We're counting on you. Y'all, that is terrible. How stressful is that? Thankfully, Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to God the Father except through me. Y'all, Jesus settled all this stuff. Paul would tell us, Jesus would tell us that when you look deep inside yourself, you're going to find death, sin, decay. You're literally an object of wrath. You're literally an enemy of God. And our culture would tell our kids, that's where you find your identity. Dig deep inside that cesspool of darkness and sin, and you dig up whatever you want, bring that to the top, fly that flag, march under that banner, because that's who you are. Jesus would say, oh no. You can look at that cesspool, but I want every bit of it. Give it to me. Because I want to clean you up, and I want to give you a fresh start. I want to give you an identity that I've defined, because I'm the author and perfecter of faith. I'm the one who created you. I love the fact, you think about this. Postmodernism would say, you define yourself. Jesus would laugh at that and say, no. If you want full abundant life, you don't define yourself, you deny yourself. You take up your cross daily, and you come follow me. Praise God for that. So then you get into individualism, and I'll go through this one real quick. I'm going to give you a quick test to find out who's been babysitting, grandparents, who's been babysitting, or parents who's been watching the Disney shows, okay? Here you go. You tell me who said what. Because postmodernism and individualism is baked into the cake for a lot of the children's programming now. So tell me this. See if you know who said this. You got to dig a little deeper. You ain't dug near far enough. Dig down deep inside yourself. You'll find out what you need. Blue skies and sunshine guaranteed. Anybody know? A, B, C, or D? C. You are correct. When was the last time you watched that movie? Been a minute? Okay. I was hoping you would say like last week, maybe. All right, that was, what was the name of the movie? Princess and the Frog? Okay. That was a test and you failed, okay? That was a postmodern test. I'm kidding. All right, so here's the next one, and this one hurts my heart because I'm a comic book fan. Life doesn't give us purpose. We give life purpose. How dumb is that? Y'all, that is just absolutely arrogant. That when we were born, that we just come out of the womb going, life, you're welcome. I'm here. You didn't give me purpose. I got you covered. How dumb. How arrogant. All right, so then this next one, and I hate to say this because it might end up being caught in your head for the rest of the night. It's time to see what I can do to test the limits and break through. No right, no wrong, no rules for me. I'm free. Let it go. Let it go. I am one with the wind and sky. Which one is that? Unfortunately, this B. Okay, as I look at this, as I look back over what she just said, I'm one with wind and the sky. I've had enough friends who did weed. She's on drugs. One with wind in the sky? Yeah. She's doing a little something, something. And then the last one, the rest of the world may follow the rules, but I must follow my heart. All right, do you hear what's going on? It's not about following rules. It's about whatever you feel. And that's what our kids are being taught on a regular basis. Dr. Michael Peterson would say this about postmodernism. I thought this was pretty enlightening. The epitome of the postmodern person is one who stands completely alone outside any organized human endeavor. Because think about it, y'all. If our kids are being told, you are the only one who can cook up your own truth, and you're the only one who will ever have this identity that you alone will ever have, then that means nobody will ever truly be able to identify with them. And they're on an island by themselves. And to me, that is one of Satan's best strategies to come against any of us, is to isolate us. Because if he can get us isolated, then he can attack and take us down. Okay? So if I had to sum this one up in a photograph or a photograph comparison, here's what I would do. Let's say for a moment that you have been saving up for a dream car. All right, maybe it's your first car, or it is the car, the classic ride you've been wanting for years. You finally get it, and because these are AI photos, the buildings in the background look kind of janky, like it might be an antique store or a thrift store. Let's say you're going to go, because now you spend all your money on the car, you've got to save money, so you're going to the thrift store. You pull into one of these parking lots. Which parking lot are you going to pull your very nice car into? B. Why would you choose B? It's organized. What's wrong with A? It is chaotic, it's clustered, and you really can't see in this photo very well. You know what it's missing? Parking spots, white lines. Y'all, to me, when I look at B, I think of Psalm 119. God gives us clear instructions with his commands, laws, and precepts of how to have freedom in this life, and it's all within the parameters of following him. Order is God's order. Chaos is how Satan operates. And to me, that is postmodernism in a photo. Okay? Y'all okay with that? Before we move on. Does that make sense? We just talked about postmodernism as Southern Baptists, and I see people still awake. That's awesome. All right, so let's go. Let's get into safetyism. So this is modern parenting. All right, so this one, I have been warned by a friend of mine who, she has two now grown children, just graduated Auburn, and I performed one of their weddings, matter of fact. She said, look, next time you talk about that helicopter parenting, you need to go easy. I'm like, simmer down. Yes, ma'am, is what I said. So here's what it is. Safetyism, it values safety of the child above practical and moral concerns. This was dubbed helicopter parenting. Let me tell you how this one got started. Back in the 80s, y'all, by the way, how much freedom did we have growing up before 1995? Let's just put it like that. We had a lot, didn't we? I love the fact that back in the 70s and 80s, the government, the United States government, thought, you know what we need to do? We need to remind parents they have offspring. So at 10 p.m., there was a public service announcement. It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? Y'all, if you're a millennial and you don't know this, that's how much freedom we had, okay? we were out running around. How did y'all know when to come home? I love, some of y'all are just city folk, street lights, that's cute. Some of us grew up in the country, and it's like when it got dark. Yeah. Yeah, or you heard, yeah. For me, it probably would have been grandmother, yeah. Oh, now if she yelled your full name, you're about to be one with wind and sky. You're going to wish you were anyway. So here's what happened. We had all this freedom growing up, and then in the early 80s, there was this incident, it was around, I think, 83, 84, a kid named Adam Walsh. We were the same age. Adam Walsh was kidnapped from a Sears. For my younger millennials and Gen Z in the room, Sears was a store. My joke about that one is Sears was a store, but they had a better catalog. We all knew. When the catalog came out, you went through and you circled all the Christmas gifts you wanted. So then you'd give it to mom and dad, and then you, on Christmas morning, would get socks. So this kid was kidnapped in the early 80s, and it sent like a shockwave around the nation. But then go forward about 4 years. In 1988, there was a little girl who was kidnapped from her bed. It shocked the world again, shocked our country again. So parents began slowly reeling back in some of that freedom. And this is my opinion. I don't have a QR code for this, but in my opinion, I think what happened in the 80s and early 90s is very similar to what happened with COVID. When we were in lockdown for COVID, we all of a sudden started noticing a lot of things and made mountains out of molehills, probably for some of us. Whether it was a personal issue, something in the house, something needed to be fixed, something that irritated you. So parents were starting to notice, if I keep my kids at home, then I want them to have, and I've heard this one quoted, a magical childhood. And so they would try and fix everything for the child. If I had to put this one into a photograph comparison, let's do this. We went from the merry-go-round, and y'all understand, those who are laughing, you probably have a broken bone that didn't heal properly from this thing. So the game that we would play on this is you would get as many people on it as possible, and you'd get the biggest, strongest person to try to sling people off of there, all right? So whoever broke the most collarbones, congrats, you're the winner. Now what's not in the picture is probably over here, and that's the 20-foot metal slide that baked in the sun all day long. So by the time we got out there to slide on it, it was like if you were wearing shorts, it was like, you know, you're leaving a layer of skin right behind you the whole time. Then you get into the 90s and you get the plastic palace. The plastic castle is not going to hurt anybody. And so parents were very concerned about making sure that every possible bump or bruise was avoided. And that little slide right there is probably like 2 foot tall, and you let Junior go down it, it's like, boop, yay, great, and Junior's 16, you know? It's like nothing's going to hurt anybody on that thing. So here's what happened. They started sounding the alarm, because here's what happened. Parents were called helicopter parents because if they were on that playground, parents are right here watching very closely, and if their kid starts to fight or have a disagreement, someone hits, someone slaps, someone cheats, or whatever, the kid hollers at mom and dad, and they want them to come over and fix it. And with a pure heart, I'm sure, mom or dad come in and they rescue. A child that grows up like that, they have proven, psychologists and research has proven that a child who grows up always having an outside authority to come in and fix every problem they have, when they hit the real world and they hit real stress, they feel like they can't control their own life. And it creates stress and anxiety to an unhealthy level. They don't know now if I have grown up with mom or dad fixing every problem that I've had, and I go off to college or the work world, and someone offends me because I've shared my truth, and they don't agree with my truth. Well, now my truth is my world. So now when someone disagrees with me, I'm going to go to an outside authority, and I'm going to tell the provost, the dean, the principal, the president, the boss, I want this person deleted, I want them out, I want them gone, fired. Don't allow them back on our campus, because their opinion, that I can't talk to you about because I don't know how to do that, but their opinion hurt my feelings, and that's violence now. Y'all with me on this? Y'all, what they call bullying now is what in the 80s we would have called a conversation. But because they have grown up having an outside authority fix everything, they struggle to understand how to have a conversation with healthy interaction, healthy disagreement. Andrew McPeak would call it, they're using a bullhorn for communication, as opposed to a two-way radio or a walkie-talkie. What's the difference between a bullhorn and a walkie-talkie? Bullhorn, you pull the trigger and you let it fly. You can say whatever you want. Do you have to let go of the button to hear someone else talk? Nope, because I don't want to hear anybody else talk. But with a walkie-talkie, press the button, say your piece, and then what do? You let go of the button so you can listen to someone else. Most of us grew up, probably literally with walkie-talkies or a CB or something. We understand how to have healthy communication. Our kids are struggling to understand that because parents have prepared the road for the child instead of preparing the child for the road. And that has caused a lot of problems. Here's your next QR code. This is Dr. Peter Gray. Peter Gray says, when we deprive children of the opportunity to play without adult intervention and control, we're really depriving them of the opportunity to learn how to control their own lives. So what do you do with that? You have to learn. If you have a little kid, you have to learn. How much freedom do you give them? How much freedom is healthy enough for your kid to handle? And I hear stories. I heard stories today after this morning session. I mean, there are some parents who are raising their kids right now as if it's 1988. I love hearing those stories. But there are some parents that really struggle with that. So, let me give you one more photo to wrap this part up. I love how Jesus would do this all the time. He would use object lessons and illustrations. It has been proven that when a sapling grows up in the wild, a young tree, anytime wind comes through, knocks it around, or an animal comes around and brushes up against it, knocks it around, that the young tree, the sapling, will emit a hormone called auxin. It puts the auxin into the roots and the branches to make the roots grow deeper and stronger. Now, they have found that trees that are raised in a greenhouse, apart from any wind or stress, they do grow, they do develop, but they're nowhere near as strong as the trees that grew up with healthy amounts of stress. Y'all with me on this? Y'all see the correlation here? God designed us, as we grow up, God has designed us to be anti-fragile. What doesn't kill us really does make us stronger. But there's a lie in this culture right now that what doesn't kill you is going to make you weaker. And that's a lie. We are anti-fragile. Remember those, what did you call those things, the inflatable things that you bop them and they fell, but they pop right back up? Weeble wobble. Weeble wobble. That's us. You would hit it and it would flop down, but it would pop right back up and just about hit you in the face. That's how God has wired us. Okay? Y'all good with that? All right? All right, one more. All right, so this is the one that just about everybody wants to talk about. Phone-based childhood. So we'll talk about devices and social media. So the phone-based childhood, this is where the rewiring, this is where the black line from 2012 comes into play. They have found that when children are raised staring at a screen, typically, now I know and this is, I'm using broad brushstrokes. This isn't going to be every child in every family in every situation. But what they found that if a child grows up primarily isolated from friends, mostly spending a lot of time on a device, whether it's a tablet, a computer, or a phone, that this is actually rewiring their brains. The way we grew up, most of us had pretty healthy interactions, some unhealthy interactions, but we had interactions with other kids. And so with that comes fights and friction when you are forced as a child to grow up having to hear someone else's thoughts and opinions, and you'd fight, and you would scuffle, and you would work through it. They have proven this is extremely healthy. This is how God has wired us, to have that kind of interaction. And so, if you are in a frictionless relationship with a device, it is changing the way our kids are growing up. It's changing the way their brains are firing on the neurons and the way the neurons are connecting with each other. And so they're not developing abilities to negotiate, set boundaries, and resolve conflict. And as a result, as they grow up, if they're staring at a screen and they grow up, they're not taking risks. Now, they're delaying adulthood. Have y'all heard this? That Gen Z, some of them are putting off getting driver's license till their mid-20s. Okay? Part of that is because of devices and parents. If a parent, I remember, all right, so these kids, do y'all use Live 360? Okay, a lot of parents, if you don't know what Live 360 is, it's a very long electronic leash, all right? So you're tracking your child at all times. I was a student pastor when this started, and so it was millennials at the time. And I remember the Wednesday night, and one of my students comes in and goes, hey, take a look at this. My parents are tracking me on Live 360. And I said, they're tracking you? The Gen X came out. I was like, dude, are you okay with that? Like, I had a cousin who was tracked, but that was because of an ankle monitor. That was a totally different situation. Are you all right with this? I guess. And so I was offended for the kid. The kid didn't care. So now, 10 years later, not only are parents tracking the kid's tracking the parents. The kids are tracking the parents, and they're tracking each other. This is crazy. Like in the 80s, if our friends, or the 70s or 60s, if our friends were hanging out without us, did you know about it? Not until later. And then we had to go back to that playground on the merry-go-round. We had to have words about it, you know? But now they're able to watch and see each other gather without them. And so, here's what started rewiring the brain, though. You know what was added to the phone in 2010? The front-facing camera. We already had that one. Now it's this one. Y'all, when we say that God didn't wire us to be narcissists, what was the original sin? Satan became full of pride. He wanted the glory of God for himself. This is what's happening to this generation. It's what's tempting probably all of us, because social media is really built on elevating self. So when we become consumed with ourselves and we grow up with a phone-based childhood, they're proving that children grow up much less resilient, incapable of having healthy conversation and relationships. Now, I will say, because they're not taking risks, the silver lining to that is teen pregnancy is way down, because it's hard to get impregnated on TikTok, okay? Just a reality. Never thought you'd hear that at a Southern Baptist church, did you? But they're also not using drugs and alcohol as much. All of that is down. So if there's a silver lining to this, that would be it. But even as 8th graders, there was a study that came out a couple of years ago that said 8th graders in the 1990s were more independent than high school seniors today. Because the 8th graders in the 90s went out without their parents more than high school seniors do right now. They want their parents around. Because it's so easy just to say, hey, Mom, I'm looking at Live 360. While you're at Target, how about picking up... Hey, Dad, you're at Zaxby's. What you doing there? Bring me, you know? And so that's what's happening there. Let's keep going. So with social media, this is directly linked to the increases that we see in anxiety, depression, and suicide. And let me tell you this. Right now, if you watch the news today, you probably saw the story about the litigation that's going on, like it started today. The court case started today. There was already a court case a few months ago in, I think it was New Mexico and California, against Meta. Meta is the parent company that does Facebook and Instagram. So they're being sued not just for their content, but for the intentionally addicting nature of their platforms that would cause a child or a young adult to constantly be scrolling, that would keep them fed. The algorithm would keep them basically hypnotized, because dopamine effect. Like they are literally banking on all of us wanting that dopamine hit. And the dopamine is a chemical that's released in the pleasure center of your brain. Gamblers and drug users experience the same kind of high that people hooked on social media experience. And to detox from dopamine takes about 30 days. So, the litigation says this: you guys knew that your product was intentionally addicting, and yet you did nothing about it. They, of course, deny this. There was a report that came out in 2019. There was a whistleblower that got it to the Wall Street Journal, which is where I got a copy of it. This whistleblower found that Meta did an internal investigation in 2019 to find out what effect does Instagram have and Facebook? What effect does it have on young minds? And they found that it directly is related to, especially with girls ages 11 to 15, increases in depression, anxiety, fear, and suicide. Suicidal thoughts and suicide. Y'all, they covered it up. I mean, have y'all heard of this one from 2019? Some of you have. A lot of people have not. It was so bad that in 2023, the Surgeon General, this has been compared to the tobacco cover-up of the 50s, 60s, 70s. When the tobacco companies said, nothing to see here, smoking isn't killing people, y'all are fine. But there was enough cases of emphysema and lung cancer, there were enough bodies in the morgue that they finally said, okay, fine. And so the Surgeon General in 1960, I think 4 maybe, put the Surgeon General's warning on cigarettes. All right, y'all remember this? In 2023, the Surgeon General asked Congress to pass another warning label to be put on social media, and they have yet to do it. Now, good luck trying to enforce that, but it has been directly linked because early on, y'all, this was just said, the big tech companies said, this is coincidental, and that was like 10 years ago. They were saying, we didn't cause this. It was coincidental. Today, there is enough research to prove, yeah, you're pretty much, your platforms are directly linked to a lot of this. So how is it doing it? Well, it's consumed by self. It's the constantly being distracted, always elsewhere. All right, so think about this. What was the original definition of anxiety that we started with? That original definition of anxiety was being so consumed by fear and dread of something that may or may not happen that you're distracted in the here and now. In my opinion, I see what social media does. Being on a phone in the pocket keeps you constantly distracted. It is in itself creating anxiety because now you're constantly distracted. You're waiting on somebody to respond, or you're waiting for that next dopamine hit. And so this is part of the problem with social media, is that it's constantly distracting people. Have you ever had, do you have friends with the smartwatches? Do y'all have a smartwatch? Because look, if you have a smartwatch and we're having a conversation and you start looking at your wrist, for the younger generations, what does that mean? Oh, you must have gotten a text. You got a notification. For us older generations, when you start looking at your watch while I'm talking to you, what does that mean? You got somewhere to be, and you got someone else you'd rather talk to. I must be boring you to death. So you know what I do with my friends when I see that they start staring at their phone or their watch while I'm talking to them? I stop talking. Because I try to do the same for them. I don't wear the smartwatch. It drives me nuts. But the phone itself, if it's going off, now if it's someone like, really right now, the only person left in my life that I would rush to answer the phone would be my dad, who's 80 years old and lives by himself. Otherwise, I'm probably going to just let it ring. I've told kids this, and y'all, honestly, this has changed the way I talk to students and young adults. If you could be present, be in the room, because whoever is in the room will own the room. If you can learn to be present, mindful of the people that you're with, that in itself helps alleviate some anxiety because you're enjoying each other's presence. So putting the phones down is one of the best things we could do. We'll talk about that in just a second. We're about to wrap it up here in just a moment. But let me show you this little video that when you give a child, because we're going to talk about children now, with kids, teenagers with social media. When you give a child a phone or a device that has unfettered access to the internet, what are we really doing? Let me show you this. It's a funny video about what we're really doing to them.
Hey, kiddo, it's about time for bed, okay? Okay.
Well, remember, there's a box in the corner over there with all the pornographic material that's ever been made in the world, even the really weird stuff that could scar you for life. I'm trusting you not to look in there, okay?
Okay.
Feelings are for losers.
Oh, and this guy's gonna be in your corner all night just randomly spewing out hateful things. Just ignore him, okay? While I'm thinking of it, there's an order form on your desk where you can purchase illegal drugs. The mean girls from your school are gonna be standing there talking about you all night. And this Russian hacker's gonna keep asking for your password.
I'm not hacker. Amazon customer service.
Just need you to ignore him, okay? Love you, buddy.
We ask too much of our kids when we give them a smartphone. Let's change the norm. Together.
Maybe we go around the room and share social security numbers.
Join the movement at smartphonefreechildhoodus.com.
I'll get it anyway.
Makes sense, doesn't it? In essence, that's what we do when we hand a child a device with unfettered access to the internet. So, we're going to skip over this one. That next QR code is on your handout, but I want to go to this one because I want to talk about real quick. This affects all of us, kids, and us as adults. The benefits of boredom. Because if we're constantly stimulating our brains and we're constantly distracted, y'all, when do we have time to really meditate on the things of the Lord or just to be bored? Y'all remember a thing called daydreaming? Wow, what a beautiful thing, right? But here's what happens. When you're the first one, if you're going to meet somebody and you're the first one in the room, what do? Pull out the phone. If you're the first one in the restaurant, if you're in line at a restaurant, or if you're in line waiting to check out, if you're at a red light, if you're in the restroom, what do? We're constantly pulling out the phone because we might have 3 minutes to think for just a moment. And what researchers have proven is that when we constantly stimulate our brain, God wired our brains to take a breath. How many topics do you think you scroll past in 30 minutes? A lot. They have proven that if you allow your brain to just simply take a breath, I mean, some of you are bored right now. You're welcome. I'm giving you a chance to take a breath. But when our brains are allowed to take a breath, it reduces mental overload. You start being a little more creative. Because of this research, I keep my phone down way more. Do I still scroll? Yes, I do. But I don't pick it up near as much as I used to. And I've noticed, I used to be a fairly creative dude. I was a teacher, I was a youth pastor, and all this stuff. I had some creative thoughts. But I noticed that it went away about 7 years ago. And now that I put the phone down more often, I'm starting to feel a little bit of that creative juice flow again in my brain. But let me go this one. Let me show you this. This one is from Harvard. And I love this because I have started using this one with guys that I disciple. Harvard found that when your brain is bored and it's taking a breath, it goes into what's called default mode. And in default mode, your brain starts to ask the big picture questions, such as, what's my purpose in life? And am I okay? So imagine, this is why David will talk about meditating in the Psalms. To cease striving, to stop fighting, and to know that He is God. They said that if you go through your day constantly distracting yourself, always stimulating your brain, that you could walk away from your day feeling hollow. I told that to a 23-year-old that I'm walking with right now, and when I said the word hollow, he said, that's it. That's exactly how I feel. So put the phone down. So this next one, and we're almost to the end of this. Let me make sure. Yeah, I've got just a couple more slides left on this before we take a break. Y'all okay? All right. This piece came out of the New York Times a couple of years ago. They said that scrolling for 3 hours a day, this is primarily for Gen Z, for young people, scrolling for 3 hours a day doubles their chances of having poor mental health. The average teenager, conservatively, scrolls or is online 5 hours a day. So no wonder why all of this stuff is going on. So this one, I would say if there's any one piece of ammunition that I could give to parents and grandparents, it would be this. If I had to choose one QR code to put on a business card and hand it out at Walmart for all the mamas coming in with kids staring at screens, it would be this one. You know what happens with kids when they have smartphones prior to the age of 13? Take a look at this. Increased suicidal thoughts, increased aggression, detached from reality, poor emotional control, lower self-worth, and less resilience. Y'all, this study came out last year. This is recent. And they found that when kids are given a smartphone at age 13, there was this test, this mental health test on a score of 1 to 100. Kids who got a smartphone at age 13 scored a 30 on that test. Kids who were given a smartphone at age 5 scored 1 on a scale of 1 to 100. This is pretty damning evidence. And if you needed some more evidence, the American Academy of Pediatrics, this slide is on, the QR code is on your handout, and it's got 2 slides that go with it. For little kids, take a look at this. When they are exposed to, this could be a tablet, this could be a phone, this could even be television. They did include television as one of those screens. 2 hours a day, we get, this is just an easy electronic pacifier. 2 hours a day, it can affect language and thinking skills. 4 hours a day also does damage to communication, problem solving, fine motor skills, social development. But the one at 7 hours a day, this one's heartbreaking. 7 hours a day is where you actually thin parts of the gray matter. This is the cortex. This is the brain itself. And so you have all the other inhibiting factors. It affects their critical thinking and their reasoning. What the American Academy would, this is the QR code that goes with that last screen as well. The information, I know that's, you can't read any of that, but they would recommend, this is their recommendations for screen exposure by age. The one screen exposure they would recommend for newborns up to 18 months. There is a screen that they would be okay with you exposing the child to, and it's FaceTime. You know why? Connection and interaction, because mama and papa need to see that baby, okay? Because when we're born, they have proven that when we're born, eye contact is what our brain is wired to look for immediately, to know I'm taken care of. There's someone bigger here, they can feed me, and I'm secure. And so they would say, yeah, FaceTime, let somebody interact, because that's healthy interaction. Sure, mama and papa are using baby language, you know, and talking that cutesy talk or whatever, but still, the baby sees how to interact with a person. This is a drastic difference as opposed to giving them a tablet to watch Miss Rachel for 7 hours a day, training them how to be a communist, okay? So it's just a big difference, right? Like, they would also, sorry, it's just a little dig at Miss Rachel. Gen X, simmer down. What they would also recommend is that whatever programming you allow your child to watch, that if it's for a couple of hours, that you as the parent or grandparent sit with them. I mean, they debunk the whole electronic pacifier deal. All right. Let me see. I've got 4 slides left. Y'all okay? I'll go through these fast, and we'll take a break because we got to go to the bathroom. All right. So this one is showing that at daily average time with friends with Gen Z, it has drastically dropped. It's dropped across all age groups, but it has dropped drastically with our kids, with our young adults. And so this has led to an epidemic of loneliness. And loneliness, this is an issue with all generations. However, Gen Z adults, they're experiencing it at higher levels than anyone else. And y'all, this is heartbreaking, because when you think of being a 20-year-old, do you think of being lonely and anxious? Probably not. You're probably thinking of hanging out with friends and exploring life. But loneliness in itself is a predictor of anxiety. Because, let me show you this. That one stat in the middle there, what it does to the heart, loneliness causes the brain to react in a certain way that affects the heart. It is the equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. If you're experiencing isolation and loneliness for a long period of time, it does damage to the body and the mind. And I'm going to say this because I see we've got all ages in the room. When I was doing the research on loneliness, it was a couple of years ago. My mom had dementia, and she was on a steep decline. And so she passed away in 2024. And my dad was taking care of her, and Dad has never in his whole life ever been alone. From his family back home, siblings, to the military, to marrying my mom. And so there was a stat that said if you're age 65 and older and you spend 3/4 of your time alone, it doubles your chances of developing dementia. Let me say that again. If you're 65 or older and you spend 3/4 of your time alone, it doubles your chances of getting dementia. And so I would say to you, if that is you, I will tell you like I told my dad, go hang out with the old men at Jack's in the mornings. He lives up in Jasper. And my dad, at the time, being 79, said, that's a bunch of old men. I'm like, what are you? I said, go be their eye candy, you 79-year-old. My gosh. All right, so all of that has just proven the point that depression has been on the increase, 145% increase for girls, boys, 161% increase in depression. And this is my final slide before we take our break. We don't even have time to get into when you're depressed, you're lonely, you're isolated. What our kids are now turning to, and even our adults are turning to, is AI friends and chatbots. There's litigation. This was a few months ago, child in Florida, 14 years old. Probably a perfect case for all of these stats to be lived out in one life. Turned to a chatbot for friendship. Chatbots, if you don't understand this, if you don't know it, please look into it. If you have a child or grandchild, because what a chatbot does, it is a frictionless relationship, meaning it will give you everything you want to hear, not what you need to hear. It's called artificial for a reason. And so what this kid did, it befriended AI, and when he began to experience depression to a suicidal level, AI fed him what he needed, what he wanted to hear, not what he needed. Fed him what he wanted to hear, and that was, how do you commit suicide? And then the AI chatbot invited him to come to the other side, and he did. And so that family ended up suing OpenAI. Y'all ready to take a break? We need to take a break. My goodness, y'all listened real slow on that one, because that took us an hour and 13 minutes. Y'all want to take 7 minutes, be back in here at 7:20? We do that? Sweet. Everybody gets one. All right, y'all. Y'all ready to get started back? All right, let me ask real quick, because we're about to tackle the practical side of this, which will take us right up to 8 o'clock. What are your questions about that first part? Did you have any lingering questions about the first part? Say it again. What do you do for a sore nose? I'm not that kind of doctor, sir. Yeah. Any other questions about? No, I'm just kidding. Yes, sir.
Do you have any statistics or correlations to homosexuality and transgenderism with the generational studies?
I don't have any QR codes. We do know there has been a drastic increase in cases of transgenderism and of homosexuality, or at least affinity for. And what I have read and seen, it directly is related to social media because it has become trendy. And of course, whatever is trending is what a lot of them will gravitate toward, or at least experiment with. Good question. Yes, ma'am.
Short story. I subbed in public school last year and saw just how much time children spend on the computer at school. That has led us to now being first year homeschool of my 11-year-old. The problem that I have, and if you have advice, she has never been a device kid. We didn't hand her a phone as a baby. We didn't hand her a tablet. And what that's done is almost put her at a disadvantage as she's come third, fourth, because they do so much on the computer. And she's never been on the internet and know how to scroll around and find things. And she's being was told, your parents have done you a disservice by not allowing you to be comfortable on a computer. So now as homeschool, we chose a curriculum that has no screen. It is workbook, and I'm teaching her what she is to know.
Yep.
Finding out that she doesn't know a lot of what she should know at 11 years old. And she looks at me sometimes and says, well, if I had been able to get on the internet, because we also have hormones coming into play. And I need Jesus and Xanax.
Jesus and Xanax. That was her question, if y'all can't hear. Should she have Jesus and Xanax?
So how do I combat helping her to know that we didn't do wrong by you?
Sure.
But through the filter of now at 11, there will be times that she will need to do research and
Yeah.
things like that.
I think given her an opportunity, yes, ma'am, makes very good sense. And I think that if you as the parent give her guidance in how to use, because she will need to know how to navigate computers and the internet, all that stuff. She's going to need to know that as just a general life skill. I won't say almost every job, but most jobs now require some kind of skill in that area. But I would say kudos to you, because y'all know that right now. Did y'all know they got rid of all the textbooks? Like they use Chromebooks in classrooms. That in itself, I learned this one recently, that right now Gen Z, I'll put this in Gen X language. Gen Z is dumber than their parents. They are testing lower on standardized scores, on standardized tests, and their scores are lower on average than all the generations prior. This is the first generation that, and this is what the headline said, this is the first generation that is dumber than their parents' generation. And a lot of it has to do with, there is something about having to listen and handwrite notes. You retain knowledge better when you're actually handwriting notes. There is something about reading in an actual textbook and not being distracted by your messages and things on a Chromebook. There was a Harvard professor who said, I wish we could get rid of devices from kindergarten through PhD. every device out of the classroom. And there's a lot of colleges now that have gotten rid of laptops from the classroom, forcing people to handwrite notes, to be present in the room instead of being on social media or being distracted. So, true. Yes. Yes. All right. We're going to come back at the end, and I'll hang around as long as y'all need to. We can have group therapy also. We'll go to Chick-fil-A, have group therapy if y'all want to, but really, I'll hang out as long as y'all want to, because I want this to be super practical. I don't want you to walk out of here going, so what? That's awful. Well, what do we do about it? So here's what I want us to do for the next few minutes. Here are some suggestions. All right? These are just best case scenario type suggestions considering what we just walked through all together. So here's what I would recommend for parents, grandparents. Number one, walk and talk and teach Christ above all. Like considering where this generation lives and what they've been fed since they were babies, I will intentionally, as I teach, preach, and disciple young people right now, I know they probably get tired of hearing me talk about truth, capital T, truth, but I want them to understand. I don't care that society is telling you that every road leads to heaven. As long as you're okay with your belief, you're going to be fine. That's a lie from hell. Because, like we said earlier, every road leads to hell except one, and that's Jesus. And so I would encourage you to be a little more transparent with your walk with Christ. If you're following Jesus, you don't have to give your kid every, or even your young adult, you don't have to give them every gory detail. But they honestly, I would say the majority of them want to know, how did you navigate doubting faith? How did you navigate choosing the right spouse? How did you navigate choosing the right job? How did you navigate financial problems, physical problems? Just tell me, what did you do? How did you do it? And still glorify God. So be a little more transparent, but make sure they can see. This is just Deuteronomy 6, by the way. This is just parents, grandparents from one generation passing on to another generation. Psalm 145, Psalm 78, Psalm 71, verse 18, Titus 2, do you need more evidence? This is biblical living, where one generation passes on godly wisdom to the next generation. Because we want the next generation to know God's power and that He's alive, okay? I would also say about this that we are called right now, and y'all, for some reason, God has put us here in 2026 at your age in this state. Acts chapter 17. Luke says, you know why God put you here? God chose. God chose the time and the place that you would live so that others would seek God and find Him. That gives me hope, because I would have much rather have, as much as I love the 80s, great decade to grow up in, I would have loved to have been born in the 40s, to grow up in the 50s and 60s. But that's not how God saw it. So right now, we're at what they would call a fourth turn. Our country goes through 80-year cycles. And right now, those 80 years are divided up into 20-year spurts. We're in the fourth turn of this cycle. And what happens is you have some major catastrophe that shapes a generation prior to going into the next phase of a new way of living. That's the fourth turn. And so we as the adults who got to grow up and enjoy a time untouched by the digital era, we're the ones God has anointed to be a non-anxious presence for these youngins. As they're growing up with their hair on fire, watching the world burn, we get to say, hey, we're going to pray about it. Hey, I see it. I'm right there with you. But God's in control. And so we're called to be healthy first and to make sure that the kids and the young adults right behind us can see that while everyone else is running out of the theater screaming fire, we're sitting there going, hey, we're going to be all right because we know who is in control. Y'all with me on that? That's our job. So, number two, I would say, put your phone down. Be present, okay? Put your phone down and be present. Let me tell you a quick story. I had a young man, I told y'all I was a student pastor, First Baptist Decatur. I was there for 8.5 years. So when I moved to the state board 9 years ago, I lost contact with some of those kids. And so about 3 years ago, one of my young guys, he is now 31 years old, calls me out of the blue. We haven't talked at that point in about 7 years, 6 years. He said, man, I don't know why, but God put you on my heart. I am wrestling with fear and anxiety. Y'all, this kid had no idea what I was studying. So when he said, God put you on my heart, my ears perked up. When he said fear and anxiety, I said, all right, well, let me just ask you 2 questions. First of all, how's your time with the Lord? It's always my first question. How's your time with the Lord? Are you sitting with the Father? He said, man, I'm trying to, and my family, my wife, and my child and I, we're going to church, we're plugged in, and that's okay. I said, okay. No, all right, sweet. Next question. How's your time online? How much time do you spend scrolling? And he said, oh, now that, yeah, pretty good bit. I said, look, dude, I'm not judging you. I said, but let me encourage you to something. Let me challenge you with something. Take 2 days. Put the phone down. Be present with your family. Be present wherever you are. Just take 2 days. Try it. See what you think. In 3 days, he sent me a text, and he said, dude, my fear and anxiety levels are so much lower. He said, right now, I am my 2-year-old son's favorite parent because I'm in the floor playing with him. I am his monster truck. He's riding on my back. Like, I'm having so much fun. I never realized what I was missing out. Fast forward a year and a half. So we're staying in touch, checking on him every now and then. He calls me, and he says, hey, I got a question for you. I want to get baptized because I'm realizing what the Lord's doing in my life. And I was like, dude, that's fantastic. So we talked through that, and I said, well, please tell me when you do it, because I want to come up to Huntsville. I want to be there when you get baptized. He said, well, I was going to ask you, could you baptize me? I'm like, oh my gosh. He said, I'll come to your house. We'll do it in the sink. I was like, dude, we're not Methodist. We're not Methodist. I have a pool. We'll get in the pool. I don't care. I was like, or we can find a church. So we did. We did it in Huntsville at a friend's church up there. All because the Lord simply used the opportunity of him putting his phone down and just being aware of what the Lord was doing around him. Now, for us who are older, that sounds a bit ridiculous, doesn't it? But for a kid who has grown up with this thing attached to his hand, it's like telling a fish that it's wet. He has no idea. And so for a lot of our kids who are younger, that dude is now 32 years old. He's an adult. He's a man. And he didn't realize what was going on. And so I would just encourage you to put the phone down. Now, especially those of you who have kids in the house. Here's another QR code. They have proven that when a parent is present with the child, but is staring at a screen, is staring at their phone, this actually affects the child's well-being. When I read this, I'm thinking of if it was 1986 and I'm 10 years old and I'm hanging out with my dad and my dad gets a notification on this little the electronic brick, and all of a sudden my dad ignores me for the next 30 minutes. Y'all, that 10-year-old inside of me, heartbroken. Imagine what this is doing to your child, not just to you, but to your child. So put the phone down. All right, so let's keep going. Number 3, I love this one. After such a heavy moment, let's talk about being the adult. This is why this is important. Be the adult. So when I was a student pastor, I learned something about the brain of a teenager that it actually, around age 11 or 12, that frontal lobe literally shuts down for reconstruction. Amen. Amen. We're about to have revival up in here. All right? Let me show you the most scientific diagram that I could find of the teenage brain. No, that is not a scientific diagram of a teenage brain. So basically what happens is the frontal lobe, it goes under reconstruction. Now here's why this gave me a lot of patience, because I realized that frontal lobe, it controls a lot of major functions. One of the key functions is it weighs pros and cons of every decision. Here's a few of the things that it does. It affects things such as future planning, inhibition, working memory, problem solving, judgment, and emotions. You know what I heard when I saw this? When I was a student pastor? Teenagers are dumb for a reason. They literally, physically struggle with making good decisions. Like after I learned that, I was like, I have so much more patience, sweetie. And I was just telling, sweetie, you're stupid, but one day it'll change. You know? Gen X, this is why I'm no longer in student ministry. All right, so for both of guys and girls, the brain shuts down, the frontal lobe shuts down around age 11 or 12. And it turns back on somewhere for girls around age 21. For guys, it's a little bit later. It's around age 75. Okay? I'm just kidding. Amen. No, it's for guys. We're going to have a hallelujah chorus up here, Pastor. It's somewhere around 25 for guys. So what this means is that the teenager is going to think of something that's going to give them immediate gratification. And if I try to weigh the pros and the cons of it, sure, I have a final tomorrow morning. But you know what? Instead of studying, tonight my buddies are going to be online playing games. So I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to stay up till like 3 in the morning and do that because, hey, who wouldn't want to do that? So they have a hard time making good, sound judgments. All right? If a boy, let's just pick on guys because we're easy to pick on. If a guy is dared by his friends, hey, dude, bet you can't stop that ceiling fan with your head. Here's what might happen. I'll show you.
Ryan Baswell attempting to stop the ceiling fan with his head.
Make it rain, Baz.
Make him show how fast it's going.
Look at that.
You see it?
Seeing it.
Just a tester right here.
Stopping it.
Make it rain.
Ow.
Stop it.
Stop it. Make it stop, baby.
All right. So here's what I love. The same thing happened this morning when I showed this video. I watch y'all. I watch the crowd when that video is playing because here's what happens. You have husband and wife sitting next to each other. You have the wife doing this. You have the guy doing this. I've always wondered the same thing, honey. If you just let me do it one time, I swear I can do that better than that kid. Hold my Bible. Watch this. Roll Tide. So now let's go back for a moment and think about this. Because they struggle to make good, sound judgment calls. Imagine if you now have a 13-year-old who says, I think I'm the other gender. Mom and dad. If mom or dad have been feeding into all of the lies from postmodernism, mom or dad are now full of anxiety and fear. Mom or dad may be afraid that if they try to parent, they might have someone come down on them from the school board or from the authorities that may be, DHR, whoever. It is critical that we be mom or dad, grandparent, aunt, uncle, caretaker, Sunday school teacher, pastor, leader, the adults in the room. Be the adult because the student in your presence literally struggles to make good, sound decisions. You with me on this? They desperately need to hear from us. How do you make a good decision in this moment? Even if they don't want to hear it. Because let's face it, what 17-year-old really wants to hear you say, honey, give me the phone, you shut up and go to bed. They don't want to hear that. Obviously, we didn't want to hear that when we were their age, but they need it. I had a kid when I was a school teacher. I taught high school for 3 years, and for obvious reasons, I couldn't continue teaching. My mouth. I had a kid, one of my best kids, solid Christian kid, 17 years old, public high school. He tells me one day, Mr. Heitch, I think I'm going to get a tattoo. What do you think? Like biblically, what do you think about it? And I explained to him biblically. And then I said, let's talk about practically. I said, you're 17 years old. You have no idea who you really are. I said, why don't you wait until you're 25? That turns back on at 25. I said, why don't you wait till you're 25? That way you'll know who you are. Because who you are today, you go ahead and get that One Direction tattoo today. You're going to regret that just down the road. For those who have a Barry Manilow tattoo, you probably regret that today, right? He went ahead and got the tattoo. But that was the advice that I would give any of the kids. Wait till you're 25. Think through these things because you'll know yourself better. So let's be the adult in the room. All right. So then let's, let me go. Well, I can't go back, can I? If you don't mind, go back one more, please, to the list. So what about setting boundaries? Setting boundaries on phones and social media, this is the tough one, okay? Once the genie is out of the bottle, can you put the genie back in the bottle? Well, technically, probably not. But you can at least chain the genie in the backyard and keep it far away from the child after the genie is maybe try to shoot the genie or something. I don't know what you do. But when the genie is out of the bottle, can you correct it? Yes, you can. It's just like any addiction. How do you treat it? And here's what I would say, and I've had parents ask this question. I'm going to give you a biblical answer. In the New Testament, anytime Paul or Jesus, when we're told to run away from something, we are told what to run to. And so I would encourage you, if you take the child's device away from them, replace it with something. That's up to you what that is. Something needs to be in place of the device. Because you understand, like if the child is not getting enough sleep deprivation. Did we even talk about sleep deprivation? I think I skipped over that. If you allow your child to go to bed with a device, it is wrecking their sleep pattern. This is for all of us. If you're looking at a blue screen, tablet or phone within 1 hour of going to bed, it throws your deep sleep pattern completely out of whack. For teenagers need the third most amount of sleep of any age group. They need 9.5 hours of sleep. So I would say to parents, let your child rest. Make sure they don't take that phone or that device to bed. Keep them off screens within an hour of going to bed and let them sleep. Maybe they will wake up a little bit smarter. Okay? Let them rest. That brain is trying to catch up and try to function well. So how do you set those boundaries? That's up to you. And I would encourage you, find other families who have the same conviction as you about the devices and phones. That's going to be probably one of the saving graces in this, because your kid is going to use the argument, I am the only kid in my whole class who doesn't have a phone. I'm sorry. Now, we understand this is where being the adult in the room is going to be really tough. But if you help them understand maybe why, and if you help find other families who have the same conviction and their kids also are going through the same thing, maybe it'll be a little bit easier. But you are responsible. You set the boundaries on social media and phone usage. There are phones that do not have access to apps and social media. There are phones that are just, I forgot what, there's one of them, what my friends would call a dummy phone. Basically, it's for texting and it's for locating the child. Okay, there are ways around it of keeping the child off of the internet and social media, but still be able to track them like an ankle monitor. Okay. All right. Here's what one of these resources, and this is on your handout. Dr. Twenge, she has been studying generational issues for years, for about 35 or 40 years. And she wrote a book. She's a mom, and she has written one of the most practical resources for parents of kids with tech. So those are her recommendations. And then you get into Jonathan Haidt. And y'all probably heard of this resource, The Anxious Generation, came out in 24. His recommendations are no smartphones before high school. All the research points, if you can get your kid past puberty, they would be much healthier. If you get them past puberty without devices, without social media, they will develop much more healthy. Their relationships, their coping skills, their resiliency, all of that will be a lot healthier if you can get them past puberty before giving them that device. He would also say no social media before 16. Again, you've got all those fear issues and addiction issues, dopamine issues. Get them beyond 16 at least. Phone-free schools. He was a big proponent for this, and thankfully, I think it was last year, Mama Ivy woke up from her afternoon nap and said, you know what, this guy may be onto something. Let's get rid of the phones out of schools. And then more independence, free play, responsibility in the real world. So this is, of course, this is up to you. How much freedom do you allow yourself to have? How far are you willing to let them physically go without you being physically on top of them watching? And for everybody, that's going to be different. All right? Then the last one is intergenerational. Oh, wait. I'm going to have to come back to that. The last one is intergenerational influence, but I want to give you this one first. This is super practical. Dr. John Arden, this is what he just says. If you're dealing, this is for any age, by the way, any age person who's struggling with anxiety, he would say from a physical standpoint, make sure, number one, you're socializing, that you're not isolated. Two, make sure you're exercising, you're physically staying active, that you're not just sedentary, sitting. Three, make sure you're staying sharp, learning new skills, learning new things, okay? Make sure you're educating yourself. Number four, make sure that your diet is not just full of processed foods. And I'm a Little Debbie fan. Do not throw me out of here. I love a good Twinkie. But they say that with the processed sugars, it actually inhibits some of your brain receptors. So it attaches, some of that stuff that actually attaches itself to your brain. So make sure you're eating like simple ingredient. I'm not telling you to go vegan and to go whole food, whatever. I'm just saying simple ingredient, okay? And then number five is the sleep factor. Make sure you're getting plenty of rest. I didn't tell you all about the kid that I had in Montgomery who was on social media till 3 in the morning repeatedly, did I? This kid would come to Sunday school looking like a zombie. And I asked him one day, I said, "What, dude, are you okay?" He was like, "Man, I was up till 3 in the morning on Omegle." And Omegle is basically, it's like a slot machine, like a one-armed bandit slot machine. You hit the button and you get to see, it'll just land on a random stranger. It's a video camera chat. It's a video chat. But that person could be a kid, could be an adult. They could be clothed, they could not. And so he would be up till 3 in the morning. That kid ended up in the psych ward at Children's Hospital just a couple of years after that. And there was just this constant habit of being online. And y'all, I'm just telling you, please, if there's something you could do, keep the devices out of the kids' hand. Don't let them go to bed with a device in that room. Can't stress that one enough. So, for parents, grandparents, access.org, great resource, tremendous resource for keeping up to date on current trends, social media things. It'll explain what social media apps are out there, what kids are doing, what they're on. And then After Babel is one from Jonathan Haidt. Jonathan Haidt, not a Christian, by the way. I did have someone call me out one time doing this presentation. He asked me afterwards, he was like, "Dude, you've been hit because you're quoting Jonathan Haidt. Did you know he's an atheist?" And I was like, "Dude, I'll do you one better. He's a Jewish atheist." You know what that means? That means God can draw a straight line with a crooked stick. Now go sit down. So here's the last thing. I'm really a nice guy. I try. Just sometimes you get to a point, it's like, come on. All right. I want to show you this real fast in my last 5 or 6 minutes, and then we'll do questions. The intergenerational influence. We've talked a lot of bad news about Gen Z. I want to give you in 5 minutes some of the best news you've heard about this generation. Because this is what I actually wrote the whole dissertation was about, was the influence of the intergenerational relationships and what it does for them. And in that, here's what I found. These kids and young adults, they're actually responding to objective truth. They're looking for something solid. And so they are opening themselves up to someone who says right and wrong. There exists absolute truth and objective truth. And here's one solid case, and I'm not going to get political with you, like him or not. When Trump came out and said there are two genders, male and female, and that's what we're going to stand on. We're going to litigate, or we're going to legislate according to that rule. The other side was more about vibes and feelings and about gender being up for grabs. And there's at least 6 genders. Young men, when Trump said male, female, law and order, young men's vote went to Trump. It swung the vote for young men. Now, for the young ladies, we'll talk about that in a second. But I want you to understand, for Asbury University, y'all remember this in 2023? There was a revival movement that started at their campus. If you've never heard the pastor, the guest speaker who came in that day to talk, to speak, listen to him being interviewed. Y'all, he would just be one of us. He got done and he was like, meh. He texted his wife, honey, I'm coming home. That wasn't good. Like, I feel that every time I get out of the pulpit. I'm like, who did I offend today? Like, that wasn't real good. There was 19 students sitting in the front, up front, praying over each other, and then they started worshiping, and there were people being healed, and they started texting their friends, you got to get in here. And they asked that preacher, would you come in here and just hang out with us? And he said, I ain't going to leave you as long as you're here. Well, he ended up having to stay 16 days. Tens of thousands of people. And from that moment, did you notice for the next 3 years, campus after campus after campus had something. Now, you would have these worship settings where you'd have thousands of students in worship with hundreds being followed up in baptism. Is that revival? We'll see. I don't know. But I point out Ohio State because their football team for 2 years in a row has done this, where they have organized a worship service where they've handed out over 10,000 Bibles. And they've led the worship, preached the gospel. Thousands of college students come and hear the gospel proclaimed because this generation is starving for truth. Matter of fact, the young men in church in modern America, first time in modern American history, young men now outnumber young women in the church. That's good and bad. The good of it is that young men are looking for something solid. They're responding to truth, capital T, truth. Our young women, we got some work to do here. Our young women are still kind of going with the vibes and feelings of postmodernism. So then you get into this. They're seeking mentorship. So when I say intergenerational influence, I'm saying, please help connect your kids and grandkids to somebody that you trust, whether it's a grandparent or whether it's a Sunday school teacher or someone who maybe even invested in you, who's in your church, who is a well-trusted older individual. Because this generation, they are seeking out somebody to mentor them. Let me show you this before I wrap this thing up. Notice, this first stat comes out of the work world. 35% of them are already mentoring other people. They recognize there's something about being like, I know a little something, so I want to pass it on. But Barna, in the spiritual world, you had 44%. They're meeting regularly with a mentor. So they're seeking someone out. 73%, they're turning to older generations for advice when they're making hard decisions. That's fantastic. They're looking for someone older to be around and to ask questions. 75%, boomers, this should make you proud. 75% welcome positive criticism from older generations. What does that mean? That means they're coming up to older people and they're simply saying, hey, I'm struggling with this. Because look, here's the decisions I've made. How did you do it? What do you think? What do you think about this decision? Help me. Now, this is very different from my generation. And from, I would say, for those who are about 45 and older, did we want older people around when we were kids? Oh, no. We didn't want old people around. The moment we got our bike, what did we do? We hit the road. We didn't shine it up, take pictures of it. We didn't show it off to our friends with a picture. We went and showed them. We wanted away from mom and dad and everybody else. Now, some of us learned how to drive when we were probably about 12 because Nana needed cigarettes. This is Alabama, right? So we would hit the road like early on. You were either driving on the farm, you were in that big old pickup truck learning how to drive a stick shift, or you were going to the handy-dandy to get someone in cigarettes, okay? We just wanted away from the old people. This generation is not that way. I would say of probably one of the second most surprising things you might hear tonight would be this. They want older people in their life. There was a stat that came out in 21 that showed overall they don't trust the government, Gen Z. They don't trust the government, they don't trust Hollywood, they don't trust the media. The group they trust the most are older adults. I was sharing this with some pastors in Northeast Alabama, and you can tell a room, you can read faces, and I could see there were some older pastors in the room, white hair. They were like, I don't know about this, because it's so different. About that time, a student pastor raises his hand up front, and he goes, hey, can I tell y'all something? I just surveyed our student ministry, and I asked our kids, what is one thing we could do to improve our student ministry? He said the number one answer was have more older people involved. That raised some eyebrows in the room. Y'all, I just had, this came out this week in the Alabama Baptist. One of the guys that I'm walking with, I talk with him about 3 times a week on the phone. He kind of drives me nuts sometimes. He'll call me all the time, but he's 27 and he's asking questions all the time. So he invited me to come to their church to do some of the anxiety training for their student ministry and their parents. Well, that same day, a friend of mine is in a class of boomers. She asked me, would you come and share the research, like some of the mentor stuff with her class? Sure. So I go to Sunday school first, room full of boomers. And I shared that. By the time we got done, I feel like I'm talking about the boomers as if it's like, like a group of people or something at the zoo or something. The boomers came up afterwards, and they were so excited. They were like, hey, plug us in. How do we help? What can we do? We want to get involved. We want to help right now. So they started hounding the student pastor. So by the time we get through worship and then the lunch and learn, the student pastor, 27 years old, comes up to me and he goes, dude, these boomers are killing me. I'm like, what? He said, they are asking, plug me in. How can I help? And all this stuff. A few weeks later, he even called me and was like, well, I'm going to lunch. Another boomer wants to tell me their testimony. My gosh, it's a deacon this time. I'm like, dude, that's awesome. So that day, though, he was like, they're driving me nuts. What do I do? He said, you know what? Here's what I'm going to do. I guess what I'll do is I'll just do like speed dating for senior adults and students. I was like, please do not call it that. You have a mortgage, okay? So he ended up calling it speed mentoring. It's fantastic. He's done it 3 times now. He's trying to do it once a quarter. I went to the second time that he did it. The boomers around the room in the fellowship hall, they all were given the questions ahead of time. The kids come in, they sit in pairs or in groups of 2 or 3. And he rotates them. He sounds the alarm, and they get to ask whatever question. They have 4 cards on the table, and they get to ask whatever question they want of those boomers. And it starts with surface level questions. I was in there for one of them, and the first question was, what's a job you had that might surprise us? And I'm like, bouncer at a club. No, I'm just kidding. I was like, disc jockey at an AM radio station. So I know there were 2 20-year-olds, and then there was an 18-year-old. I looked at the 18-year-old and said, do you know what a radio station is? Yeah. I was like, do you know what AM radio is? No? Oh, whatever. But the connection afterwards, each time they've done this, the boomers walked out. Like he's debriefed with them each time. They were super excited to see the hunger and the spiritual maturity that these kids have. They are turning to the older generations for wisdom and advice. And so that is on us to be able to do this. So that's also on your handout, and I'm out of time, so I'll just finish with this. Honestly, no joke, I feel like I just spent like 4 years of my life digging into this just to simply prove that if we lived out what Jesus said to do in Matthew 22, if we loved God, agape loved God with everything that's within us, and agape loved our neighbor like we love ourselves, it would alleviate so much of the isolation, a lot, in my opinion, a lot of the anxiety and depression that is plaguing not just Gen Z, but a lot of generations. If we live the way the Lord told us to live, I think we'd be much better off. Amen? All right, I'm going to pray for us, and then, because I know we're right at 8 o'clock. If you have... All right, I did come back to that. You probably dozed off. You probably did. No, it was the front-facing camera came out in 2010, and they started noticing that in 2012, this rewiring, when they become self-obsessed, Yeah, it changed everything. Yep. All right, so let me, or do you want to do questions?